Hey everyone, Miss Pampiano here. Excited to finally start our new read aloud for the fantasy unit, The Thief of Always. Today, what the teachers asked you to do is they asked you to orientate yourself to the text. So remember, when we do that work, we're looking around the book. We're not just jumping in. We're looking at the cover, we're looking at the back. So things that we notice in the cover, maybe any illustrations. So right away I'm noticing this creepy house. I'm wondering if this is going to be a big part of our setting. In the back I'm noticing a blurb and I'm noticing some positive comments about the book. Some text features that the author may have used. So this was a table of contents. This previews for us all the chapters that the author has included in this book. And one thing I also noticed that I really liked is the illustrations throughout the book. More specifically, each chapter starting with an illustration. So without further ado, chapter 1 of The Thief of Always. This is called Harvey Half Devoured. And I'm looking at this and I'm wondering who this is. I'm not sure if I should be freaked out yet. He does look a little creepy. Let's find out together. The great gray beast, February, had eaten Harvey Swick alive. Here he was, buried in the belly of that smothering month, wondering if he would ever find his way out through the cold coils that lay between here and Easter. He didn't think much of his chances. More than likely, he'd become so bored as the hours crawled by that one day he'd simply forget to breathe. Then maybe people would get to wondering why such a fine young lad had perished in his prime. It would become a celebrated mystery, which wouldn't be solved until some great detective decided to recreate a day in Harvey's life. Then and only then, the grim truth be discovered. The detective would first follow Harvey's route to school every morning, trekking through the dismal streets. Then he'd sit at Harvey's desk and listen to the pitiful drone of the history teacher and the science teacher, and wonder how the heroic boy had managed to keep his eyes open. And finally, as the wasted day dwindled into dusk, he traced the homeward trek, and as he stepped foot on the step from which he had departed that morning, people asked them, as they would, why such a sweet soul as Harvey had died. He would simply shake his head and say, "It's very simple." "Oh?" the curious crowd would say. "Do tell." And brushing away a tear, the detective would reply, Harvey Swick was eaten by the gray beast of February. I really like how this author includes so much figurative language, not just describing February as a boring month, but really making us feel like Harvey is dreading every single day. Harvey is dreading waking up, going to school, doing the same thing over and over again. He feels like he is so bored that this month is going to just swallow him up whole. And the author does a really good job of making us feel that way. Let's continue. It was a monstrous month, that was for sure, a dire and dreary month. The pleasures of Christmas, both sharp and sweet, were already dimming in Harvey's memory, and the promise of summer was so remote as to be mythical. There'd be a spring break, of course, but how far off was that? 5 weeks? 6? Mathematics wasn't his strong point. So he didn't irritate himself further by attempting and failing to calculate the days. He simply knew that long before the sun came to save him, he would have withered away in the belly of the beast. "You shouldn't waste your time sitting up here," his mother said, when she came in and found him watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass of his bedroom window. "I've got nothing better to do," Harvey said, without looking around. "Well then, you can make yourself useful," his mom said. Harvey shuddered. Useful! That was another word for hard labor. He sprang up, marshalling his excuses. He hadn't done this, he hadn't done that, but it was too late. You can start by tidying up this room, his mom said. But don't sit here wishing the days away, honey. Life's too short. But that's a good boy. And as she left him to it, muttering to himself, he stared around the room. It wasn't even untidy. There were 1 or 2 games scattered around, a couple of drawers open, a few clothes hanging out. It looked just fine. I'm 10, he said to himself. Having no brothers or sisters, he talked to himself a lot. I mean, it's not like I'm a kid. I don't have to tidy up just because she says so. It's so boring. He wasn't just muttering now. He was talking out loud. I want to. He went to the mirror and quizzed it. What do I want? The straw-haired, snub-nosed, brown-eyed boy he saw before him shook his head. I don't know what I want, he said. I just know I'll die if I don't have some fun. I will. I'll die. As he spoke, the window rattled. A gust of wind blew hard against it. Then a second, then a third. And even though Harvey didn't remember the window being so much as an inch ajar, it was suddenly thrown open. Cold rain spattered his face. Half closing his eyes, he crossed to the window and fumbled to slam it, making sure that the latch was in place this time. The wind had started his lamp moving, and when he turned back, the whole room seemed to be swinging around. One moment the light was blazing in his eyes, the next it was flooding the opposite wall. But in between the blaze and the flood, it lit the middle of his room. And standing there, shaking the rain off his hat, was a stranger. He looked harmless enough. He was no more than 6 inches taller than Harvey. His frame scrawny, his skin distinctly yellowish in color. He was wearing a fancy suit, a pair of spectacles, and a lavish smile. Who are you? Harvey demanded, wondering how he could get past this interloper and to the door. Don't be nervous, teasing off one of his suede gloves, taking Harvey's hand and shaking it. My name's Rictus. You are Harvey Swick, aren't you? Just pausing for a moment, thinking about this person in the beginning of our chapter. I'm wondering if this is Rictus. What do we think? Creepy? Not creepy? Good? Not good? Let's keep reading. My name's Rictus. You are Harvey Swick, aren't you? Yes. I thought for a moment I'd got the wrong house. Harvey couldn't take his eyes off Rictus's grin. It was wide enough to shame a shark, with 2 perfect rows of gleaming teeth. Rictus took off his spectacles, pulled a handkerchief from the pocket of his waterlogged jacket, then started to mop off the raindrops. Either he or the handkerchief gave off an odor that was far from fragrant. The smell, in truth, was flatulent. You've got questions, I can see that, Rictus said to Harvey. Yeah? Ask away. I've got nothing to hide. Well, how did you get in, for one thing? Through the window, of course. It's a long way up from the street. Not if you're flying. Flying? Of course. How else am I going to get around on a foul night like this? It was either that or a rowboat. You short folks got to watch out when it's raining hard. One wrong step and you're swimming. He peered at Harvey quizzically. Do you swim? In the summer, sometimes, Harvey replied, wanting to get back to the business of flying. But Rictus took the conversation in another direction entirely. On nights like this, he said, doesn't it seem like there'll never be summer? It sure does, Harvey said. You know, I heard you sighing a mile off, and I said to myself, there's a kid who needs a vacation. He consulted his watch. If you've got time, that is. The time? For a trip, boy, for a trip. You need an adventure, young Swick, somewhere out of this world. How you hear me sighing when you were a mile away? Harvey wanted to know. Why should you care? I heard you. That's all that matters. Is it magic of some kind? Maybe. Why won't you tell me? Rictus gave Harvey a beady stare. I think you're too inquisitive for your own good, that's why, he said, his smile decaying a little. If you don't want help, that's fine by me. He made a move towards the window. The wind was still gusting against the glass, as though eager to come back in and carry its passenger away. Wait, Harvey said. For what? I'm sorry, I won't ask any more questions. Rictus halted his hand on the latch. No more questions, eh? I promise, said Harvey. I told you, I'm sorry. So you did. Rictus peered out at the rain. I know a place where the days are always sunny, he said, and the nights are full of wonders. Could you take me there? We said no questions, boy. We agreed. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Being a forgiving sort, I'll forget you spoke, and I'll tell you this. If you want me to inquire on your behalf, I'll see if they've got room for another guest. I'd like that. I'm not guaranteeing anything, Rictus said, opening the latch. I understand. The wind gusted suddenly and blew the window wide. The light began to swing wildly. Watch for me, Rictus yelled above the din of the wind and the rain. Harvey started to ask him if he'd been coming back soon, but stopped himself in the nick of time. No questions, boy, Rictus said, and as he spoke, the wind seemed to fill up his coat. It rose around him like a black balloon, and he was suddenly swept over the window-sill. Questions rot the mind, he hollered as he went. Keep your mouth shut, and we'll see what comes your way. And with that, the wind carried him off, the balloon of his coat rising like a black moon against a rainy sky. So that was the first chapter of The Thief of Always. What you'll find underneath this video are a couple of questions about chapter 1. Please make sure you fill them out on our Google form. It was a pleasure reading with you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.